Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Isabelle. Thank you very much, Jérôme, for the invitation to introduce the eLTER project from a French perspective. I will try to complement the nice talk given by Stefan. Jérôme, you were mentioning yesterday morning, if I remember well, that eLTER should be viewed as an opportunity for our research community. And obviously, as the national coordinator of eLTER France, I fully agree with you. If I did not agree, I would probably be dismissed from this position before the end of my mandate. That said, we still have to convince that eLTER is relevant and useful. And so I picked this title to reflect this feeling. This is my feeling that there is a non-symmetrical relationship between eLTER and our research community. For sure, implementing a research infrastructure entirely depends on the commitment of site managers, engineers, researchers, and so on. But at the same time, given our very high workload, given the limited resources and the very nature of a S3 RI, we are still questioning the appropriateness of our participation to an RI like eLTER. So to start with, just to remind that a research network, a research infrastructure is completely different from a research network. Okay, these are two different things. The to-do list of a research infrastructure, RI, as summarized on the bottom right of this slide, this to-do list includes a lot of things, like defining the legal framework, defining the business model, defining the governance scheme, performance indicators, and so on. And most of these topics are very far from the expertise of researchers. And to say it in different words, most of us do not want to get bored with these questions, okay? So instead, we want our professional life to be illuminated, enchanted by research questions and insights, knowledge challenges, and so on. So these are two different things, but we know that they are interdependent, and probably they will become increasingly interdependent. And what we are looking for is this virtuous circle with positive feedback loops. Okay, so we see the RI providing facilities, services, data, physical access, and so on, that will benefit the research community. And in return, the research community will provide scientific inputs in terms of recommendations, guidelines, example of success stories, and so on. And all this will help the improvement of the RI. To me, the challenge is really to initiate this positive feedback at the European scale, and with a very ambitious research agenda, as reminded by Stefan. This is a slide introducing eLTER RI in two different ways. On the left, you have one of the main conclusion of the European evaluation of the project, highlighting that this RI is filling a gap in the EU RI landscape, and this was a very clear top-down stimulus to build eLTER. And the right side of the slide is a metaphor of eLTER implementation. It was shown by Michael Myrtle last December during the first interim council. And this is a piece of art showing that the starting point of, the idea is that the starting point of eLTER is firmly anchored, in the sense that we have strong incentives to move forward. But in the same time, the construction is still very fragile and with lots of uncertainties. And the message here is that eLTER is really an ongoing process, as also reminded by Stefan. And in the long run, eLTER will be what we decide to do with it. And for sure, France needs to, we need to be a force of proposal in this respect. And once again, nothing is carved in stone, as said by Stefan. So why should I care? Let's start with the first set of arguments. Probably these arguments sound a bit conventional or maybe technocratical, I don't know. Being part of a RI is a way to increase the visibility of a site, of a research, of an observatory, increasing its attractiveness, okay? Also enabling to gain recognition by funding agencies and probably to secure long-term funded, as mentioned by Stefan. I would prefer focusing on another set of arguments. The first one is partnership, because, and maybe these arguments are a bit more emotional, I would say. The first one is partnerships and collaboration, because I, for one, consider that this is probably the most rewarding facet of our professional life. And there is a hope here to establish new partnerships facilitated by a European scale RI. And frankly, I think it's really important to have this, let's say, funding strategy that complement other funding strategies that are more targeted to individual researchers, like, for example, ERC project. I think we should have both of these way of funding research. The second argument is, we were talking about these last days, the critical zone science, or the world system approach we want to develop with a very strong ambition to bring together different disciplines to address the major challenges we are facing. And this is something really exciting. And as a researcher, and maybe you have the same feeling as mine, as a researcher, sometimes I feel like walking in the footsteps of great scholars and humanists. And I would take this example of Alexander von Humboldt to cite one of the most famous ones, and also to make a wink to Stefan, because it's an example of the long tradition of academic relationship between France and Germany. The last one is Europe, because, and the European, our contribution to the European research area. And probably this largely goes beyond the scientific domain. To put it that way, frankly, I have the strong belief that we, as a European citizen, we need to defend some of our most cherished values. And the first one is scientific independence of European research for sustainability science. The second one is contributing to an evidence, what I call an evidence-based society, a society that is acknowledging facts, that is accounting for scientific evidence ahead of decision making. And the last one is what I call ecological literacy, or it could be also critical zone literacy. That is the hope to raise the awareness of European citizens on environmental crises, but also to see an increasing knowledge, skills, and motivation to work towards solutions of current problem, but also to prevent the emergence of new problems. So these are really, to me, the main reason why we should not hesitate to engage ourselves, to commit ourselves in this construction, this implementation of European scale critical zone infrastructure. So there are key challenges for eLTER France, and I listed here 3 of them. The first one is how to contribute to and also to benefit from this eLTER implementation. The second is to find a way to create synergies between the design of our national RI and the design of eLTER RI. And the last one is, we are I will introduce the next talk with this one, is to develop LTSAR platforms at the crossroad between OZCAR and the réseau network of zone atelier. And this is really a challenge ahead, and something we need to dedicate most of our efforts in the forthcoming months. So just to briefly introduce these challenges for the contribution to eLTER, there are many ways to do that, to contribute to eLTER. And Stefan was mentioning for sure the participation to expert groups, but also we have to remind that we need to contribute to the science case studies of the PLUS project. This is very important. Other ways are participation to the site and platform forum. So there was the first SPF organized 1 week ago, and there were around 20 attendees, French attendees at this forum. So it's a very good start. And there will be over SPF, and I think it's a really good arena to discuss the key issues of standard observation, management of sites, and so on, engagement of sites and site managers and researchers and so on. Also, I would like to mention that there is the possibility of proposing, but also benefiting from different access, that physical access, virtual access, remote access. Physical access through the transnational access program, able to to ease the mobilities of researchers across eLTER sites. Virtual access refer to data sharing, and remote access is the possibility to perform distributed experiments across eLTER sites, or to conduct large-scale sampling across eLTER sites. And just to mention one example, we were talking about this calcite bag experiment with Stefan Binet 2 days ago, and this is typically the kind of experiment that could be deployed at the European scale, benefiting from the eLTER network of sites. That, I think this is something we need to think about. And of course, our participation, our contribution is also on more technical issues like data flows, the estimate of the cost of our sites and running cost of our sites and platforms, what kind of training we would need, what kind of services we are waiting for and we can contribute to. And also a very important topic for next month is, are we in a position to propose, I mean France is in a position to propose a topic center in the eLTER framework. And there are probably many possibilities, but we need to discuss this together. Sorry. So one of the main challenge for us is this notion of LTSAR platform, because it's one of the way to contribute to this network of sites, hierarchy of sites, as explained by Stefan. It's probably the most ambitious. We can also think to contributing with master sites or focal sites or satellite site. But if we want to contribute in terms of platforms, we need to engage very strong discussions with OZCAR and the network of Zone Atelier. So these platforms, to me, this is a really nice opportunity to foster these synergies between disciplines, geosciences, biodiversity sciences, social sciences, but also to foster synergies between national array. And platforms are, as I wrote down here, they are more than dots on a map, okay? They are transdisciplinary research and observation long-term projects in which we will establish very strong link with stakeholders. And I just remind you that one of the pillars of eLTER project is this notion of place-based research, okay? And it is a bottom-up process. Okay, we need to build on existing facilities. We need to build on research success stories, and it is not. It is definitely not a reset. Okay, we need to build on what is existing, and we need also to have strong and very clear encouragement and stimulus from the institution, from our national institution, to build and to think about to design these LTSR platforms in the next month. Just to remind you that there are many ways to get in touch with eLTER through the task force. So comprising Mathilde, Virginie, and I. Mathilde is more in charge of the legal and administrative affairs. Virginie is more dedicated to all the questions related to data, co-location, communication. For sure, you can contact Isabelle and Jérôme because they are, at the head of OZCAR, very well aware of what is going on. And also the institution representatives who are attending at the eLTER French Council. So I mean CNRS, INRAE, IRD. For example, we're discussing a bit about these overseas sites, and it's very important to discuss at the IRD level the kind of commitment that is proposed and that is envisaged in the eLTER framework. We have a core team, eLTER core team, that will be extended to new platforms, to new LTSR platform, and probably also master sites. For now, it comprises the site manager of the 4 sites which are engaged in the PLUS project, but in the long term, this core team will be extended to new proposition of sites and platform. The eLTER webinar that will be organized every 6 months. So there was a first one at the beginning of this year, and with more than 60 attendees. So it was a good start as well. SPF forum, as I said, working groups, and then different websites where you can find information on eLTER implementation. And this is my last slide. For transition with the next talk, you have a partial view of a proposed LTSR platform in the Alpes, in the French Alps, between Lautaret and Galibier Pass, with a high elevation watersheds, network of sites, of instrumented sites. ICOS site as well, the yellow triangle. So what we can call a master site, but within a more broader special unit that could be proposed as a LTSER platform. My very last words to emphasize the very proactive role of Jérôme and Isabelle in all these discussions, and both at the European level and at the national level. And I think it's very worth mentioning their strong willingness to move forward on all the challenges we listed, and this is very much appreciated. So thank you very much, Isabelle and Jérôme.
Thank you, Philippe. It was a very, very interesting talk. Thank you for your vision of what France should move to. So I'm giving the floor to Jérôme. Is that the plan?
Yep. I stopped sharing my screen. It's okay.
Hello everybody, you hear me?
Oui, il faudrait que tu passes en plein écran la présentation.
Ah.
Voilà, merci.
So first, good morning, everybody. So we will make this short presentation of the Lautaret-Oisans platform proposal with 3 voices. With Isabelle Arpin, we coordinate the zone atelier Alpes. So we are another Isabelle and Jérôme team. And we will make this presentation with Jean-Gabriel Vallet, the director of the Lautaret station and the coordinator of this proposal. First, I have to be clear that I don't really speak a good English, as you see. So I apologize for that. I know that we are supposed to be very fluent in English, but it's not my case, and I'm sorry for that. But more seriously, I have to say that we are talking about here a proposal. We are still in work in this proposition, and we are in a phase more, I can say it, a bottom-up phase. We are just sharing a document in the Alpine level with colleagues involved in the construction of the platform, and we try to have a common view of this platform. And in a second step, we will go with this proposition at the national level, the direction of OZCAR and Réseau des Zones Ateliers, to discuss this proposition. But it's very important to understand that we are in the work is in progress. My second point is just to say that perhaps it's useful to share our process, because it can be useful for other people in the same dynamic elsewhere. Jean-Gabriel?
Oui. Yes, dear Jérôme. So as you say, I'm the head of the Lautaret Garden, and we think that it's in something important for our construction, so that the reason why I'm for the moment the putative coordinator of the project of platform. So just few words, this botanical garden is an old garden, more than a century, with tourists, real tourists. So it's interesting to make outreach and to speak about the importance of our research in those ecosystems. And we're also devoted to support of science. So there is about 20 or maybe 30 teams, different teams that comes each year to work in summer and in winter. And we are some 10 persons, and we are devoted to support of the research. So for the French, we are what we call UMS, Mixed Unit Services, and we are not a lab. So we work to support researchers. And we work in different, in all the main keywords of eLTER, so geoscience, ecology, socio-ecosystems. And we are also implicated in two RI, ICOS. We are an associated site with the implication of IGE in University of Grenoble Alpes University. And we are also implicated in HANAE, which means that we have experiments also on this site. Okay, and one thing important is that we have CNRS and university site. Okay, so maybe I can pass the next slide. Jérôme, I don't know. Yeah, okay. So this garden is in the middle of the Alps and the frontier between Hautes-Alpes and Isère. And so experiments and observations are in a cycle around the garden, which makes this Lautaret garden near the area as a master site, if I understood properly. And in the frontier of this red area, we propose to be a LTSER platform with a lot of observation with OZCAR research infrastructure and a lot of different interesting frontiers to study social questions. But I will stop now, and Jerome, you can take the.
So you can see on the map the platform. So it's quite large area. It's more or less 2,000 square kilometer. And as you can see, there is a lot of instrumented sites belonging to different structure, but anyway. So we start from a site of monitoring, and with this cross network, we have some instrumented site on some abiotic or climatic variables. In air, in soil, in water, both in river and lake. We have some survey of biological and ecological evolution with classical botanical survey, but with environmental DNA monitoring in the Orchamps gradient. And we have some point, for example, in mountain huts, or in a relationship with the agricultural world on observation of human practices. So we start the platform with this network of sites, because we have yet data. We don't go without nothing. Another point, in the south of the map, you see the presence of an Écrin National Park. And just to say that taking into account our partnership is very important when we have to build such a platform, because to be sure that to build a relevant network of observation, I think that we have to involve some stakeholders. And for the zone atelier point of view, the protected area manager are a very useful partner to build some research. So we start with a point of measurement, but to involve our community, we have to build a scientific project. It was perhaps one of the important idea of our construction, that we have to share some scientific purpose. And on this objective, we have based our scientific project clearly not on a disciplinary basis, but on an integrative approach with that we call a boundary object. So object which required by nature a crossing approach or interdisciplinary works. So we try to define some few objects, then we can work together using the platform facility. We have defined at this stage 5 objects. I will describe briefly 4, and Isabelle the 5th. So this object should be considered as a meeting point, especially for the both community, Zone Atelier and OZCAR community. Clearly, that are objects that are not clearly on the same level, the same type, but at this stage, I think it doesn't matter. So we are 4 objects, 4 axes, if you prefer. 1 on snow and water, 1 on biogeochemical transfer and cycles and ecosystem functioning, 1 on pastureland, on mountain pasture, alpage, and 1 on high mountain landscape. on each object, we have tried to define some specific question, some scientific specific question will be used the platform. And for each object, we have tried to define scientific challenges that then we have to work. But clearly, between this object, there is some that we call transversal question or common approach. For example, biodiversity change, global change monitoring, socio-ecosystem trajectories, for example, feedback between social compartment and biophysical compartment, ecosystem services, or critical zone functioning. They are, let's say, a basic conceptual or basic tool that clearly is it's shared between the different objects. I don't want to go into the detail. I think we don't have the time for that, but we have a text describing a scientific challenge for each of these objects. I have just put here some example. And for example, for the snowpack, we want to work on the monitoring of snowpack evolution. It's clearly a huge question for the mountain environment. And we have, and it's important for both hydrological question and land use planning and policies on the development of ski resort or agricultural question. But for example, we want to work on the snow as an ecosystem because algae, fungi are very important elements with feedback on the snow melt. And for example, the effect of the change in snowpack distribution on biodiversity, because as you know, in mountain, snowpack distribution is a key point for soil temperature regime, and soil temperature regime is a main driver for biological community in high altitude meadow. So change in snowpack distribution have a huge change in biodiversity in such meadows. So we have this type of challenges for mountain pasture. It's a central point for us because it's our classical model in the zone atelier Alpes. We have to works on scientific challenge on biogeophysical model of farming and pasture grazing system, taking into account, for example, the professional knowledge. And other example is a better understanding of drivers of alpine greening. You know that the Alps are in green evolution. By remote sensing, we are able to see that there is an increase of the productivity since 40 years, but the drivers, the model of this greening is at this moment well known. And we need to share some data, for example, to better understand this process. On biogeochemical transfer and functioning of the ecosystem, it's clearly a meeting point for Zone Atelier and OZCAR community. We are still in work in this important question. Just to be clear, I think that we have an important stake trying to develop a high elevation watershed or network of instrumented watershed to act as a complement to hydrological studies in lowland. My last point on the fourth object, just to be more focused, just an example of a scientific challenge in the functioning and fate of glacial foreland or glacial forefield or glacial margins. Let's say just an area recently deglaciated after the glacier melting. It's very an example, very useful to understand how we can use the platform as a starting point to develop, I think, a new approach or new crossing between us. There is a lot of works made by geoscientists, by glacioclim, cryopsclim, OZCAR people on the knowledge of the cryosphere dynamic, the model of glacier retreats. We are able, thanks to this work, to build chronosequences to model the future evolution of glacier. There are a lot of works on hazard in such margins, and there is some device and some instrumented seat to follow the hydrology and sedimentary transfer in this specific zone. On the other way, for ecologists, glacial forefield is a fascinating object because it's one of the rare ecosystem where we have idea of the age of the ecosystem. There are rare places when we have information about, for example, the age of the soil. And we are working now on the soil development and the weathering, the early weathering of the soil in the first step of the deglaciation. We are working on the soil organic matter accumulation and with some question about, for example, nitrogen and phosphorus supply by weathering. At the same time, we have colleagues working on monitoring of biological community evolution in the same foreland with time, both on aquatic ecosystem, for example, our colleagues in the Zabre, and in a terrestrial ecosystem with a botanical survey, with environmental DNA to follow the evolution of the ecosystem. So we have here a lot of data, and when we share this data, it's obvious that we have a strong linkage between these compartments. We can see, for example, the biogeomorphic feedback. Some plants, for example, who act as engineering species to stabilize the slope and reducing the hazard, to promote the development of soil. So a large set of processes that are linked between these compartments, and it's obvious that we have to work together to better understand this object and its fate. Last but not least, typically this type of object need for social sciences and human sciences. For example, this new ecosystem, the perception of this new ecosystem is a question. When we talk about glacier melting, it's always seen only as a loss. From white landscape to a gray landscape is always first a loss. But when we consider evolution from a gray landscape to green landscape, surely the perception of this change evolve. And this perception can have a huge impact on the policies that the society will decide to have in such environment. There is people that saying that we have to protect this new ecosystem as a biological point of view, but there is some stakes on recreative activities or hydroelectricity, as you can see here with an example of Switzerland. So just an example, it's not the platform, but I think that we are here an example of how we can use the shared effort between communities to have new monitoring strategy. We are with a new use of yet existing data to have to promote new knowledge. Isabelle?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Jérôme. So I will now introduce the fifth object Jérôme mentioned earlier, which is the Lautaret platform LTSR proposal itself, in addition to the four objects that Jérôme just presented. So it is the red circle at the center of the picture on the screen, and focusing on the platform itself will enable us to address cross-cutting questions and to be reflexive. So first, we intend to work on data collection and transmission. There are mostly scientific and technical issues here, and they take much of our time and energy. Of course, this is not original. All scientific platforms must reflect on the ways in which the data are collected and the data sets are stored, processed, shared. So again, this is not original. What is specific, however, is the setting in which we perform data collection and all these data-related activities. Because as you saw, we work in a high mountain setting. This, of course, has consequences on the type of methods, type of equipments and instruments we can use, as they must be adjusted to a very harsh environment. It also influences the ways in which we can host colleagues from other European countries, and how more generally we can interact with the people interested in the activities of the platform. So it's technical issues first, but there are also ethical issues here. For instance, should we set limits to the seemingly endless extension of data collection? What can we do in the name of science? These questions are particularly important in strongly protected environments, as is the case in some parts of the platform proposal. Jérôme talked about the Écrin National Park, and we have an integral reserve within the platform proposal. So these issues, these ethical issues, need to be discussed collectively between the scientists from different disciplinary backgrounds, but not only between the scientists, also with a variety of non-academic publics who may have very different views on these issues. The platform also raises social issues concerning notably the establishment of interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary collaborations. How do we foster collaboration between researchers who have very different disciplinary backgrounds, and how do we foster collaboration between scientists and between other publics, such as the farmers who live around the platform proposal, with the local representatives, for example, with the tourists who come to the Jardin du Lautaret, just to give a few examples. So obviously all these people have different concerns, interests, objectives, and they also have different knowledge systems. So this raises questions that we need to address as well. And finally, around when we choose the platform itself as a boundary object, we also want to address political issues. One major goal and the very raison d'être of LTR platforms are to enhance the capacity to face the wicked problems of the Anthropocene, and also to contribute to a path towards a more ecological society. We intend to reflect on the capacity of the activities we want to develop to this goal. To what extent do the categories we want to perform contribute to not only improve the relationships between different groups of actors, and not only to a better understanding of the environmental problems at stake, but to what extent do they also contribute to bettering these problems themselves? For instance, to what extent do they contribute to maintaining sustainable farming activities in the platform? To what extent do they contribute to making tourism more compatible with water and biodiversity conservation? As you see, these are very cross-cutting issues, essential issues, and we think that they should certainly not be forgotten. So this is the point why we want to add this fifth boundary object to the four more perhaps classical or usual objects that we depicted just before. Next slide.
Just a few words to say that the role of the Lautaret is to promote the construction of the platform and to help searchers to work together. So we can help for administrative questions, all the questions that don't interest the searchers. Philippe talk about. We can have add value on those administrative questions. We are also devoted to the technical supports. So we have facilities. Good years, it's around 1,000 nights that are spent in the Lautaret facilities. Bad years like this COVID years, it's 200 or 300. And we can also be implicated in all the data sharings and all the question of the virtual access and remote access. And we can also be implicated in the transnational access. We have four projects at the moment that are candidates in the call. Okay, and also communication. So the important thing also is to organize the discussion about the governance of this platform. How can we work? How can we have a steering committee for all these questions that were presented by Jérôme and Isabelle? How it is possible to decide what is master, satellite, regular, focal? It's big, complicated. So how we can work together with all this vocabulary, and we can also facilitate all the discussion between the communities and especially the two LabX and the two RI. Okay, so I finish for my part. Thank you, Jérôme. Maybe a conclusion.
No, I think it's just an example of construction. We are in progress, and you see that we have to take into account scientific question, logistical and technical question related to the monitoring and to the production of variables. But I think it's very important to go with this phase of bottom-up approach, a local approach with the point of view of the local scientific involved in the platform.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe I just forgot one thing, that we have a document, a living document, it's like that we say, or a common document, a shared document that is in the community, the scientific community, the local scientific community. And we hope that in something like 1 month, maybe we will be able to share this document to see how it's possible to have something that make a summary of what explained Jérôme and Isabelle.